In the village of Ikon, surrounded by green hills and fertile farms, lived Princess Zai. Her father, King Kwame, ruled the village with fairness and wisdom. Zai, the king's oldest daughter, was known for her kindness and gentle nature. She treated the villagers with respect and often helped them with their daily tasks. But Zai had a problem that had plagued her for as long as she could remember. She had a very strong body odor. Even as a young girl, Zai smelled worse than the other children. As she grew older, the odor became more intense. It was a pungent, unpleasant smell that lingered around her wherever she went. Despite her best efforts, no amount of bathing or herbal remedies could eliminate the scent. As Zai grew into a young woman, the villagers began to treat her differently. They avoided her because of the smell, and behind her back, they made unkind jokes. Mothers would pull their children away when they saw her coming, and the young girls who once played with her now turned in the opposite direction to avoid her. This made Zai very sad and lonely. Many young men in Ikon and the neighboring villages wanted to court Zai because she was beautiful and the king's daughter. However, as soon as they got close to her, they were repelled by her odor and quickly lost interest. Zai's beauty and royal status were not enough to overcome her smell, and she remained alone. Feeling isolated, Zai stopped leaving the palace most days. She would sit in her bedroom, looking out the window and dreaming of a man who could accept her despite her smell. She imagined a husband who would love her for her kind heart, but it seemed impossible. Many nights, she cried herself to sleep, feeling hopeless. One hot summer day, Zai was fanning herself in her bedroom when she heard lively sounds from the village square. There was drumming and laughter, and she saw people dancing around a bonfire, celebrating the summer feast day. Zai felt a sudden excitement and decided she would sneak out of the palace to watch the festivities from a distance. She quietly left the palace and made her way to the edge of the village square. At first, no one noticed her, and she stood in the shadows, watching the joyous celebration. But soon, a breeze carried her odor through the crowd. The music and dancing stopped as people wrinkled their noses and looked around for the source of the smell. When they saw Zai, their faces twisted in disgust, and they began to whisper and point. Humiliated, Zai ran from the square, tears streaming down her face. She hid behind some bushes, trembling and ashamed. She thought she was alone until she heard the steady beat of a drum getting closer. Peering through the leaves, she saw a young man from a neighboring village, smiling and playing a hand drum as he walked toward her hiding spot. When he reached her, he stopped playing and asked, "Why did you stop dancing? You looked so joyful." Surprised, Zai replied, "You can smell me, and yet you came looking for me. Everyone else avoids me." The young man smiled gently. "I think you're a wonderful dancer. Don't worry about what others say. Keep dancing with happiness." Zai was touched by his kind words. She realized he truly didn't care about her smell. Encouraged, she decided to ignore the cruel taunts of her neighbors. The young man, whose name was Django, started playing an upbeat rhythm on his drum. Hesitantly at first, Zai began to sway to the music. Django's warm smile gave her confidence, and soon she was dancing freely, forgetting about her worries. As the weeks passed, Zai and Django met every afternoon in their secret spot. They talked and laughed for hours, and Django played his drum while Zai danced. Their friendship deepened, and soon they began to feel a warm affection for each other. Zai felt happier than she had in years, but she worried about their future. She was a princess, and Django was a commoner. She knew her father would expect her to marry someone of high status. One afternoon, as they sat talking, Django took Zai's hands in his and told her he wanted to be with her forever. He asked her to marry him, saying he didn't care about royal customs. He just wanted to be with her. Zai was overjoyed and accepted his proposal. They decided to ask for her parents' permission to marry and then seek Django's family's blessing. However, Soon after their engagement, tragedy struck. A deadly plague swept through the villages, spreading quickly. The symptoms were high fever and painful boils. Those infected often died within days. In an effort to contain the outbreak, the village leaders sealed off their borders. No one was allowed to travel between the villages. Zay and Jengo were separated. Zay was trapped in the palace, unable to see Jengo. She worried constantly about his safety. Weeks turned into months, and the isolation wore on them both. Zay prayed every day that Jengo was still alive. Despite their efforts to avoid the plague, Zay eventually fell ill. She developed a high fever and painful boils. Her parents did everything they could to help her, but nothing seemed to work. Zay became very weak and close to death. In a desperate attempt to save her, her mother remembered an old remedy made from bitter roots and animal blood. They gave it to Zay, and miraculously, she began to recover. As she regained her strength, Zay noticed that the fever had somehow cured her of her body odor. She was overjoyed and rushed to tell her parents the good news. The plague eventually subsided, and the quarantine was lifted. Zay and Jengo were reunited, and their love was stronger than ever. The villagers, who had once shunned Zay, now celebrated her courage and resilience. Zay and Jengo were married, and their union brought peace and prosperity to the villages. Zay's story became a cherished tale of hope and redemption, reminding everyone that true beauty lies within and that love can overcome any obstacle.